Hello and welcome to the Warp Shelf. I'm Frank Duran.
I'm Deshaun Vasquez.
Today we are two artists reaching into the pile of, what would you call it, Deshaun?
Any sort of art. That can be films and TV, that can be video games sometimes, that can be comics, that can be any storytelling medium that means a lot to you.
And today, something that means a lot to me is Scott Pilgrim. I love Scott Pilgrim. I think that could be said for Deshaun too. I think that could be said without question. We are big Scott Pilgrim fans.
We
Deshaun
we have a
bigger
whole
than me.
Episode about it.
Yeah,
And
we already have an episode about it.
That was years ago. That was like not too long after the podcast had just came back.
Yeah, so if you really want to go back on the RSS feed or on you'll be able to find it. It's still there on any podcast platform. So very worth if you want that as a precursor to this. But you don't need that because we're gonna get into it deep here,
Although,
guys.
it is interesting to note that predates not only the game finally being available again.
Yeah, she's got runner.
Yeah, the complete edition that looks like a Sega Genesis case.
Oh, so beautiful, so beautiful.
But it also predates the Anamanaguchi tour for the game soundtrack.
Nice. I love it. So basically, guys, we're going to talk about Scott Pilgrim Takes Off today. The new Netflix, I would say Scott Pilgrim anime, you would call it. Because it's not just an animated show, it's an anime. It's straight from Japan,
it's on the cusp.
It's on the cusp, even though maybe it's set in Canada, so
it is. It's one of those things where it's like either or. I'm not going to argue if you call it.
I
ain't
gonna
anime.
argue semantics. But the point is that this was basically pitched to everybody as finally the complete adaptation of Scott Pilgrim. Is what I think it was pitched to, as you saw from the trailer.
It was certainly marketed that way.
Yeah, it was marketed, I would say, and I think most people going into it thought, wow, we're finally going to get the whole Scott Pilgrim story animated. Which, guys, that's spoilers, and it's not really spoiler because it's kind of the whole fucking point of the show. That's not what this is. That this is a different story. This is, the marketing definitely makes it look like this is shot for shot. At least the first bit is shot for shot, the movie animated, or at least the comics strictly animated, so strict to the comics, and I love Deshaun just flexing on him. But it's one of those things that you sit there going, oh my God, I love this. They're finally doing the books, and they're doing them to the letter and straying from it.
Yeah, because one of the things that we discussed way back when in the original episode is that Scott Pilgrim for the movie is a very interesting point adaptation wise, because that film was basically greenlit for development not long after volume 1 of the comic had blown up. So it was in development for about 5 to 7 years as it was going along and as the comic kept progressing. And by the time they were finally working on the movie, the final, the ending to the comic hadn't even come out yet. So they had to sort of go in their own direction. So it's not really a sense of this is faithful and this isn't. It's more like it's more like they were kind of going on around the same time, and they both sort of took influence from each other. O'Malley's admitted that the way the movie went also influenced the comic to sort of do something different.
Yeah, and I like that, and I think that that's very interesting, and I think that's what's so cool. So that's what I think is so cool about this show, is that I went in thinking, okay, they're gonna adapt the books, which I love. No question, me and Deshaun read them in college. Absolutely love them. I love the Edgar Wright movie. We already talked about it. It's one of my favorites. But the books are fantastic, and they go that much further. So when this came out, and at the end of the first episode, the foot drops and Scott Pilgrim loses. This is a big moment because it's one of those things where you're like, I think a lot of fans got really fucking angry. If you've been online and you've read some reviews, people got fucking, they just couldn't recover, Deshaun. They just couldn't fucking recover that Scott Pilgrim loses to Matt Patel in the first episode, and they literally, their brain broke for the rest of watching it, which awesome. Deshaun, I love that Pop Funko. It literally, I saw so many reviews, they were like, oh, it's unwatchable after that. They changed it and I couldn't watch it. And I'm like,
yeah,
okay, obviously you're not a fucking book reader because you didn't fucking read the books, because this is, I already knew from that moment what this was, that we were finally expanding on the Scott Pilgrim universe
I had picked
in a
up
unique way.
On the like last two trailers, like the official and then the final, that like these shots aren't in the book, or we're doing stuff too soon.
Yeah.
So we're doing something different somewhere. I just don't know where and when. I just didn't think it was going to be so immediate. Just like, oh, we're really into different territory now.
I like this because it's not a what if situation. I think they do a beautiful job of tying this back in at the end and making everything canon and like and everything fun and included. And I think that that's what's so great about this show, is that it's almost hyper aware of itself in a way. And it's actually one of the main reasons why I love this show. It shows emotional growth. Is that weird, Deshaun, to say? Is that fucking weird to say about a fucking creator and a storyline? I feel like
the big
comparisons, they grew up.
The big comparisons that came up with this, and like the direction it took, came up two things that I sort of agree with. One, it very much honored itself. So you think of like End of Evangelion and the Rebuild movies, and FF7 Remake, which also was just like, we baited you with the same story. But then this turned into like a metatextual like thing about facing destiny and changing the timelines. You're like, oh, okay.
Oh,
so
cool.
On that aspect, I get the reaction to it, especially in the negative, because I hated the rug pull in FF7R because I don't trust Nomura and team to actually deliver that on an engaging story. I've been through Kingdom Hearts. I don't trust them to do this.
But didn't you complete the fuck out of that game? I thought you platinumed that.
I had a lot of fun with that game. I liked it a lot. I didn't platinum it though.
Oh, sorry.
But the rug pull doesn't come until like the very end.
Oh, okay.
Other than that, it's more or less like it's following the plot of the original game.
Okay,
than,
so
like,
they're really relying
make it
on you're gonna buy this second half that is after this big twist, really, for that, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're like,
the idea of FF7 is that it's going to be 3 games for the remake. Yeah. So like the rug pull at the end, it'd be like, wow, this is a great modern interpretation of that first game. The only stuff we're changing is to just make it better. So then to just completely go like, Nope, we're going for some metatextual shit. Just like, yeah, but I don't want the metatextual shit. It's like, yeah, but FF7's one of the most iconic games of all time. It's just like, yeah, but it's still from 3 to 4 console generations ago, and a lot of people aren't going to play it because it's old.
That's true.
Which is fine.
I've
and
played
it's also
through most of it. I haven't completed it because of that reason.
It's also a case of like why it bothers me less for this, because there's also a thing about accessibility. Like the comics are just there. You can read them. You can play the game. It follows the plot of the books. It's not the same thing.
Okay. No, I would say that here too. I want to say that to any fan who's sitting here worried and you're listening to this and you haven't watched the show yet, and you're going, oh man, they changed the plot of Scott Pilgrim. They're not doing a straight adaptation. Guys, there's the game. There's the books and there's the game. You can literally read the books and play the game and get Scott Pilgrim, like literally the way it's supposed to be. And then you can watch the movie and get a really cool, like, condensed version of Scott Pilgrim. And then now you have this really great anime that's kind of a self-contained little thing. Like, I really hope they don't make a season 2. I hope this is it. I hope they are done.
There is definitely a hook by the end.
Yeah, but I am still cool with it, with them
like
being
that bit with Julie and Gideon was just like, eh?
Yeah, right. They're like season 2? Question mark. But I like that it is self-contained and it feels complete by the end, because I didn't want, by the end of it, by how epic it got, I was kind of like, please close this off because this is great, and like stick the landing. And I think they stick the landing. I think they do the ending to Flash better than Flash did. And you go back to my Flash review. I liked that ending. I thought that was kind of cool, where he fights an older self that's angrier. No, Scott Pilgrim does it fucking better.
Frank, what Flash review? We didn't do an episode on it.
Oh, no, I was yelling about it in some other review.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry, not a Flash review. I yelled about it in some other thing, though. I was fucking angry about it or something. It was definitely in some recorded thing we did. But sorry. But this is a better ending than the Flash, in that it does basically the same thing at the end, in a better way. In a more cohesive way, and and a more fun way, and I think that's pretty incredible that like they go from being like, okay, this is Scott Pilgrim, and you're like, cool, Scott Pilgrim, rug pull, and then they give you basically this fantastic deep dive on not only Ramona, who I never thought got enough time even in the books, like even when they give her a ton of time in the books, I think, they it's not enough. And I think it's great that
the primary problem is the matter of like what we're seeing as a POV. Like Scott is the main protagonist in the books and most of the media. So even though this entire thing kind of cruxes on Ramona's like former relationships, we don't really dive into those especially deeply because we're seeing it from Scott's POV, which in his point is just a means to an end. Just like, this is just someone I need to fight.
And that's why I think this is kind of a genius show where it is able to flip the script on Scott Pilgrim. It's able to deep dive not only into Ramona, but each of these exes, and then like emotionally evolve, like instead of just being like, I'm gonna beat the fuck out of you until we're done, and that's video game logic, like Scott Pilgrim does, they literally grow and become better people, almost all of them. And I think that's what I loved about this show. Maybe I'm just old now. And I think that's great, but I thought that was awesome. I was like, everyone had emotional intelligence.
Although it does sort of make me sad about and a lot of this could be unintentional, just me inferring a little too much into it, but it kind of depresses me about Scott's character. Because if there's one thing that's always criticized about Scott Pilgrim from the very beginning, from the books to the movie, is Scott as a character, especially in the movie where he's a little more dickish than he is in the books, because like there's a section of growth in the books that the movie doesn't have time to really get into. So having the idea that like everything resolves itself more or less peacefully with Ramona there and Scott being out of the picture, and you have that joke where like he's finally back and he's ready to fight and everyone's good because their character arcs are complete, and given like what we do with the future Scott stuff, it really kind of feeds into the like Scott Pilgrim is the worst thing about his own series, and it makes me sad.
But come on, it's talking about something truthful there, that a lot of guys don't like to think of themselves as the bad guy of their own stories. I know that's a very male thing to do, is to be like, oh, no, it's somebody else's fault that I am this way, or that, and I can fix it if I fuck over those people, or
I'm a nice guy.
If I raise a little bit better, or, I do something else. But like, a lot of guys, like don't look into themselves and realize they're the fucking issue. And, and that what really takes emotional intelligence, is to be like, like I might be the problem. I might be the the saying where they're like, hey, if you run into one asshole, that's one asshole. But if you run into assholes all day, you might be the asshole.
Yeah.
Scott Pilgrim might be the asshole if literally he runs into assholes all day.
Yeah.
You know?
And it is a case of like, because I've heard this before, of just like, of course, even though Scott does go through a legitimately touching
Yes.
character arc
Oh,
in the
yeah.
books, you know, he was still in his early 20s. Like, there's still more than enough room in decades to make mistakes. I'm sure when we first read the books, it's just like, well, he's fine. He's leveled
He's
out.
fine.
Not even knowing like what our 30s were going to be like. Just like, no, you're still just always growing, always
Yeah.
changing. It is
And
a little sad. It is one of those things where like, I'm not sure book Scott would have fallen back on his old bullshit so hard for the future Scott stuff. I could see maybe movie Scott,
You
book
mean
Scott,
for
I
older
doubt.
Scott or even older Scott? Which one are
Yeah.
we talking about here? Older Scott or even older Scott? Because even older Scott is obviously it's like the full incel, you know, like the even older Scott, where he just thinks that nobody else cares and he fully cuts himself off, even though everybody didn't give him that indication, you know, that nobody cares, you know, like nobody. I think that's one of Scott's things, is he never realizes all the people that are around him, and even though they're sometimes sort of mean to him, they love him, you know, and they like have him around, you know, like. And I think that that's like one of those things that he never realizes, and I think that's what, you know, this show is kind of about in a lot of ways, you know, like, is that he, you know, with by cutting off all these people, you know, like he gets into trouble, you know, like by being lonely, you know, like by being cut off from people and being like, I only have this one mindset, which is a stupid fucking mindset. You do dumb things, you know, like when you could just really just talk to your friends or have like a genuine conversation with people you love, you know, like about, you know, what you're going through.
Yeah.
Like,
But that's the thing. We kind of already did this stuff already with like the Nega Scott arc in the
yeah.
books.
Yes, in the books, yes, absolutely. With the Nega Scott stuff, they definitely
like that was the whole thing. So
right.
It is a way to sort of do that again. Although that's not even unprecedented for like what this is influenced by, like comics and manga and anime. You can always have both. You can have like, I'm the evil version of you. I'm what you could become. And you can do the like, I'm like your literal evil doppelganger. Like I am a shadowy version. And oftentimes they'll just do both. It's fine.
It's fine. I do want to bring that up about this, is that I think that's the great thing about, you know, watching and playing all the Scott Pilgrim stuff, is that there's a bunch of different manga, video games, movie references all throughout this. And that's what you love about Scott Pilgrim, you know, and that's what I think they do so well in this anime, is that they're able to still do that, you know, like still innovate on their references, and not just fall back to old jokes, you know, from the books or the movie, and kind of make their own new references, their own new jokes. And I think that's what really grows here.
That's sort of why like I'm not against them doing another season, because this series at its core is basically a secret sequel. Like,
yeah, right. It is, right.
It's a secret sequel where we make the reboot part of it actually part of the plot.
And I think that,
and we just kind
awesome.
of we kind of just pull like comic book continuity shit, like some DC Comics nonsense of just like we just kind of rebooted the timeline.
I was dying at the end when she was like, so you made a fucking movie that could be a musical so Scott could eventually know that you loved him? You're like, and she's like, yeah, it sounds convoluted. And I'm like, yeah, that's some DC shit right there, where you're like, what did you do? And he's like, Superman, I went into the future and I did this one thing to send back to you this one message. And you're like, oh, thanks, I forgot about you. And now because of that, I remember you, and now those worlds exist somewhere. You know, that's Crisis shit. You know, like, so it's like, I love that. I even though it's kind of like self-referential jokes there, I love that. You know, like,
although the only like issue that comes about it with them not being open about that and the marketing that this was going to go in like a super different direction and maybe pushing that or maybe even changing the title
I think
because
they
of
should
that.
push
Because
it now.
it
I think they
hints
should
it
push
hints
it
at
now.
it with like it is literally called Scott Pilgrim Takes Off. Might as well be Scott
which
Pilgrim
is not.
Fucks Off because he's out of most of it.
I like that because I liked what they did here. It definitely threw me off, but I think now is the time to kind of peel off the tape and just kind of market the show as like Scott loses. What does Ramona do?
Yeah, because my concern
that would help people not be as pissed. You know, like I like the initial reaction because it worked for me. I thought I was going in being like, woo, but then I was like, oh fuck, what? And then I was angry for like half an episode, and then I was fine because I knew what they were doing. And they were doing
and what
it
is
well.
an artist but a provocateur? But
yeah, and you gotta grow. And I think that's what this whole fucking show is about, is artistic and emotional growth. And I think that that's what this show does so well, is it's able to weave that into the plot. And you're like, what the fuck?
There's a big but.
Big but.
This should not be where you start for Scott Pilgrim, for like Scott Pilgrim Media. And that's sort of the issue, is that you would think like, oh, if you've never seen the movie or read the books, you're like, okay, I'm not really into reading comics. Like, maybe I've seen the movie, but I should start here because I like animated series and stuff like that. And you think like, oh, I'll get here because this is the representation. Just like, oh, this is not where you should start at all.
No, that's why I think they should rip off the Band-Aid on the
at minimum,
marketing
you should have seen the movie.
Because, yes. At minimum, you should see the movie because they're definitely referencing it. I don't think that this is... I don't think you'd be lost if you were a new viewer. I think you could definitely understand what the fuck was going on. But if you can read the books, play the games, watch the movie at least, you know, like that's gonna help under what's going on with everything, you know, like it's definitely one of those things where it's like Deshaun being like, no, you have to play Witcher 1 and 2 to play 3. And I was like, Deshaun, it's fine. I don't know anything of going on and I'm having the best time of my goddamn life.
You're literally at the end of a trilogy that was built up. They literally built up the Wild Hunt since the first game, and it's called Witcher 3: The Wild Hunt.
It's still epic. Like, it doesn't matter if I don't know what the fuck those things are. They're still epic as shit, you know? Like, I'm like, damn, that's another big monster I gotta go fucking kill. You know?
Yeah,
like,
but The Witcher 3 also isn't a metatextual rewrite of the entire franchise.
Yes. To be fair,
that's predicated on your knowledge of what happens in that original timeline.
Okay, I agree with you there. That is very true. But I think you're very apt with your Neon Genesis Evangelion, and it's referenced several times in this show. Comparison.
Yeah,
to this
episode 4 literally has like that giant statue head of Scott, or it looks like the fucking poster of End of Evangelion with the giant Ray head.
I was like, shit. And then they do the AK fields at the end when they can't kiss. They call it an AK field. And then they're like, it's the anti-kiss field. And you're like, what? Like, I was literally like screaming when they were doing that. I was like, what the fuck is happening? They're doing a direct reference. Like, they're not like, and
they're no strangers to direct references. No. It can't always just be the video games.
Oh my God, I was losing it. And then I was losing it about, and I had to say something to you this morning so I could remember it, is that the Death Strand, like her carrying the Death Stranding backpack in the future, murdered me, sent me flying. I haven't even played Death Stranding, but of course I've watched so much media about Death Stranding, but that just fucking sent me on a fucking, I was dying because like it's such a weird direct reference, you know, like, and it made me be like, look, that's new, you know, like that's a newer video game and they're able to reference it here and weave it into all the other references and it works. Of course the Virtua Boy joke was fucking sending me also. I was dying that they were like, yeah, we got VR in the future.
And you and I, as both Clone High fans, I'm sure you appreciated Will Forte playing older Scott.
Oh my God. So yes, I want to say that is that you're probably going into the show because of the cast. I think the cast is absolutely fantastic. I can't believe they got everyone back. Everyone's fantastic being back. It's a dream for any fan of of
Yeah,
Scott Pilgrim.
we have
to hear
O'Malley
them
writing
back.
it himself. We
Yeah.
brought back the entire cast like of the movie aside from the twins, because the twins couldn't really speak English. That's why they never talk in the movie. We bring back Anamanaguchi to the score for the game to work on new music for this. And we have Science Saru, who's like already like a growing titan in the anime industry to animate it.
Right.
So kind of the perfect storm, which again, I also get why that
And-
sort of feeds into the like, oh, I wish they just did the books.
I wish they just did it, but
because we had the perfect.
They could do that
next.
They could just do that next season. I wouldn't even be mad if Scott Pilgrim season 2 is just them doing the books because fuck it, we did it, like we did the fucking contained Ramona Flowers adventure. I love it. The other people I wanted to point out from the cast here that are new additions that I think are hilarious in every role. Stephen Johnson, you know him as like the TikTok food review guy. You've heard him on many videos. He's got that deep voice. He's the announcer for this whole show. Incredible. Like, the man's voice was made for this, and I was so excited to hear him talk. Like, I'm subscribed to him on YouTube Shorts, and I was like, oh, that's fucking amazing that he's here and doing doing it awesome. The other, of course, the Simon Pegg and Nick Frost cameo was really fucking funny. I thought that was great.
I also love that the director is named Edgar Wrong.
This is what I was gonna say, is that Edgar Wrong, voiced by Plinkley, or you probably know him as the actor Kevin McDonald. It was I don't know. That guy is fucking funny. I actually seen him live. I've seen him do sketch comedy. He's fucking funny. So him being Edgar Wrong I was dying. He was so good. Because it's, if you're a Lilo and Stitch fan, he's Plinkley, and that's you're just like, that's fantastic. Like, that's just too good. I thought that was such a great add to this. And then Will Forte as Old Scott. That was great because he played. It's a great thing because you're saying Clone High, but I immediately thought of Last Man on Earth. Like, it's kind of a reference to his other show that he's like the last Scott. Like, and you're just like, oh no.
Yeah, that and Abe from Clone High isn't unlike Scott.
Yeah,
and hell, the fucking revival of Clone High also sort of does the thing where, like, Abe's not really the lead in the Clone High reboot, really. Kind of shifts to Joan.
Yeah.
Both for, like, the same intent to
Yes.
be like, this really should be about her, at least for now.
And I also loved Finn Wolfhard, Stranger Things boy, as teen Scott Pilgrim.
That was interesting because I could totally see, if the movie was made today, them casting him as Scott. Right?
I think that's exactly on the money, is that I would watch if you were going to do another more live action Scott Pilgrim. Finn Wolfhard wouldn't be a bad fucking choice. But you shouldn't. You should keep doing more of these animes. I would keep watching them. We crushed these. I crushed this in 2 days. Deshaun, you crushed it in a day.
The day it came out.
Yeah, Netflix. If this is what you want us binging these shows, this is the fucking formula. Give me exactly this, and an artist fucking flexing their growth on fucking Netflix. I fucking love that shit. Fucking love it. So Deshaun, what are your thoughts about, like, once the shoe drops? What do you think about the pacing? Because I think it does get to it, but what do you think?
I enjoy it because one of the things that will surprise you if you've only seen the movie and then you've read the book, which is like me, I saw the movie first before I read the book, is how much more of a character piece the book is and how much slower it is. Like, yeah, it has action set pieces, it has big video game referencey fights, but it is almost like a slice of life type
it's
of
following
series
Scott around
with the occasional like anime nonsense, and it's really just about like the character growth. So the fact that it felt so authentic to the books in that respect that we're really focusing on growth here, like
Yeah.
mending relationships with all these different exes that Ramona's able to do just on an interpersonal level instead of just leveling it to the guy just like, I'll just punch him, that'll fix everything.
I'll just punch him. I also really loved every episode having the Ramona dyeing her hair, kind of as a signal that like this is something you've never seen before. You've always seen Ramona show up and she has different hair, and now you are seeing what she's doing almost every morning, which is probably not good for your hair, but like like it's like what she's
it's
doing
never
every
been
morning.
good for your hair. It's not going to stop them.
Yeah, it's not going to stop being good for your hair. But yeah, unless they can like zzz, like laser on a different color or something in the future or something like that. It's something to make it better. I don't know. They could laser engrave a lot of things.
I'm sure in the future we'll just make it easier. We won't be able to cure cancer, but we sure will be able to laser your hair a different color.
You're like, oh yeah, that's still rampant. No worries. But downloadable hair, what do you think? Like, you're like, all right. You're like, all right, sounds good.
It's all fun and games, so they start charging you microtransactions to live.
Yeah, right. Cyberpunk myself. You're like, oh shit. But yeah, EA. If they,
but yeah, pacing wise, like I was for it, just because it felt like the books. It only felt slow, like relative to the movie, because the movie's like bam, 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 bam.
Yes.
We can't have this actually take place over the course of like months and months and months. This needs to literally be like a thing where the joke is he's kind of fighting a new ex every week.
I really like that they kind of announce what they're doing in the show. They're kind of like she announces that she was really into Columbo, and then it's basically Ramona Flowers doing Columbo, for a couple episodes, which I'm a detective fan. I'm for it. Like and even if it's the mystery,
and there has
turns
been like
out
this,
not to be like.
There has been like this revival of interest in Columbo over the past few years, thanks to the internet.
Right, everyone
just like
got
memes,
access
there's just been
to
like
Columbo.
this huge resurgence of it.
It's weird. It's like people got access to Columbo and they're like, oh yeah, that's the shit. they're like, oh yeah, he fucking delivered. I mean, if you've ever seen a Columbo episode, the minute he fucking does the turn, like when he's like, but one actually, yeah, but one more thing, you're like, God damn it, he's got him. You're like, he's got him. That motherfucker's got him. Like it works. It's good TV, no matter how old it gets. Like it's fun TV. And that's what I think works here, is that they're able to kind of like do that here, where they're like, she gets to pull the Columbo move a couple times after beating up people most of the time or doing something ridiculous with them. I really enjoyed that. I also I think that every character here gets more time. It's not just Ramona. Like Wallace Wells gets a fuckload more time, and I think that's
Young Neil
absolutely
does
worth
too.
it. Young Neil gets a ton of time. Needed it. I thought that I've always needed more Young Neil. So I thought it was really funny that we got like so much Neil. Like I was like, oh hell yeah, this is great.
And I love how like intentionally kind of like deadpan he is the entire time, because that is kind of the way. Like in the movie, he's just kind of like, look at this cute kid. He just wants to fit in. In the books, he's always been just kind of spacey the whole time. So
not
I'm
exactly
glad that
paying
this
attention.
like reflected it.
Yeah, I like that. Well, my sleep paralysis demon. You're like, do you have a sleep paralysis demon? He's like, no. And you're just like, what the fuck?
I don't remember writing that part.
I was dying with his line when he was like, why are we mixing dangerous chemicals on a movie set? That's not safe. I was dying with that. I was like, I don't know why that was so like perfect. There's a lot of like production jokes here, and maybe that's why I found the humor so funny, is there's a lot of like jokes about making movies, slipped in here, and I thought that was a lot of fun. The other characters that get a lot more time, of course, is Audrey Plaza's Julie. I think that she's used as a fucking joke, really fucking fast, just you know, in the movie several times, and in the books. You know, like in the books, it's very much just like your foul mouthed friend. You know, like, and he or she gets like a whole thing, and I was like, this is awesome, good for her. You know,
Yeah,
like I'm
her
like,
ending up with Gideon is hilarious because it's like, of course, the two fucking worst people would thrive together.
right? You're like, yeah, that makes sense. You're like, okay, all right. I do like that they were like,
Just like,
they
yeah,
just,
we know we're toxic and it's fucking hot.
and it's hot. Yeah, I thought that was great. I really enjoy that, like that Chris Evans as Lucas Lee is so deep in here too. Like, and
Mhm.
so is Brendan Roth as sorry, what's Brendan
Todd.
Roth's character? Todd Ingram. I was done because like though it's Captain America and fucking Superman, and that's always blown my mind that they were just in Scott Pilgrim, and now they're back, and it's not just like, oh, there's Todd for like 20 minutes of an episode. He's in every fucking episode, and
Mhm.
he's like big parts of it. I mean, not sorry, Lucas Lee is big parts of almost
Yeah,
every episode.
they're
And then
prominent.
Todd, it gets like a big part with Wallace, and you're just like, what the fuck? Like, and Envy even gets a ton more time. You know, like it just feels like you're right. It's the secret sequel in that, you know, like that it is doing a lot more with characters that actually haven't grown from that point. So it's kind of like a reboot, sequel, fun twist, different what if situation. And if it doesn't break your fucking mind balls, you might have a good fucking time.
Yeah.
You know, like that's really it. Is that I got on the internet immediately after that first episode, though, and I was dying at the IMBD reviews, guys. If you want to have a good time, go to IMBD and read all the butt hurt people. They're like, what? And then it just becomes the Ramona Flowers show, and then I have to watch a lady? That's gay. You're like, oh my god, dude, what the fuck is happening here? You know, like these people are fucking nuts. But basically, if you can get past that, this isn't a straight adaptation of Scott Pilgrim, you're gonna have a fucking great time with this show. It feels faithful. It feels new. It feels like growth. And it has everybody you love back doing even more than they ever did.
Yeah,
Like,
it is one of those things where, like, coming out of it, and I still feel a little bit this way, just like, did I come out of it liking it? Just like, yeah, absolutely. Would I have still just preferred a straight adaptations of the books? Probably, yeah. Yeah, I probably still would have just preferred a straight adaptation of the books.
There's a reason why the Scott Pilgrim books they got recolored recently, like past 5 years. They got, you know, like, and we have the movie. There's a reason why, guys. These are great books. They are fantastic. Now,
it's one of those things where, like,
it's
one of those things where, like, I could have seen
problem.
this as just a, like, one-shot sequel comic that's like 1 volume's worth. Instead of calling it Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, maybe you just call it like Ramona Flowers, whatever subtitle you want to add, and just push the idea of just like, yeah, we're telling another story, but we're also kind of messing with what we did in the original series for fun. And maybe I would have preferred it, but I also don't want to take away from the fact of how beautifully animated this was and how cool it was to get the movie cast back.
Yeah.
So it's just like,
that's the thing, is I don't want people to take it the wrong way, is that this is fantastically done, well animated. The cast is fantastic. Will you be probably upset as a Scott Pilgrim book fan that, like, you're not getting that? Yeah, probably. Is that okay? Yeah, that's fine.
Like,
that's fine,
if
because
you're a fan
Netflix
of
marketed
Lisa,
it as that.
if you're a fan of Lisa and finally wanted some Lisa representation, you're just kind of boned. If you wanted some Joseph, you're kind of boned, although he is in the background of like one shot.
I was dying that they were like, I'm Scott's sister at the end. You're just like, yeah, what the fuck happened there?
No, that's
Like,
Stacy.
just...
Lisa is his
Stacey.
Blonde ex-girlfriend from back when he lived in a different province.
Yes, I remember that. That was yeah.
Like, the movie definitely doesn't have time to go into all of that.
And I I I think that if if you take the marketing off of it, you will. And that's the thing is, I think you should. People are going in with expectations. I think people got to stop going in with such hard expectations and start going in being like, "Wow, I got new Scott Pilgrim," because that's what it is. It's new Scott Pilgrim. Even if it's not adapting a book, that's why I think it's kind of cool. It's like, yes, it's upsetting that you're not getting an adaptation of the books, but I got new content. Is that bad? Oh, hell nah, because it's good. But I understand what you're saying, Deshaun, that like they did. That's what they did. They advertised it as like, shit, man, here it is. Scott Pilgrim takes off.
Finally,
Be
and the
first
perfect
book.
storm of everything. We got the movie cast. We got Adamanaguchi working on the music. We got Edgar Wright producing. We got O'Malley writing it himself. It's going to be fucking amazing. So it's like, oh, a sequel. Well, could you have prepared me for that?
I don't know. That's the thing is, I think,
but that's also sort of kind of part of the point. Like they want you to get the rug pulled. They want to provoke.
Because I think we said it in our false start, which you'll probably have to wait to see that. But like we talk about that they bring up like the first time you notice something is weird that about this adaptation is, and there's a couple things, but like the first like real moment is he goes up to Ramona and he says, about Sonic instead of Pac-Man. And
it's Pac-Man in the movie. It's no video game reference in the book. In the book, he just like comments on how he likes her shoes.
Yes.
Before he's just like, I don't know what to say. I'm going to go.
And I think I think that's the big moment where you go, wait, okay, that was way different. Like that was a big moment that was different. And then but then they snap you right back to it where they're like, oh look, we're doing the book thing where he goes up to Julie instead of going all up to the party guests all over, like, and I was like, okay, so right back to the book, like they just wanted to try a different scene. And then they start doing the Rockette scene a little bit differently, and I started being like, wait.
Yeah, it's like the fight is starting, but one, we've already seen Gideon like very early on, which I just presumed was just like, okay, we're just going to establish Gideon.
It's an anime. So we have to show the bad.
Yeah, we'll just have him as like a looming force over this the entire time. But instead, it's just like, okay, this fight's going differently. Huh. There's no demon hipster chicks.
Yeah, they haven't even broke them out yet. And then the smoke happens and you're like, and I immediately was like, what, where do you go? Where do you go? Like immediately, like, which is exactly what they want, like, where do you go from killing Scott Pilgrim? Which I think which is what's fun about this. They could have called this like, like any Ramona Flowers in like any mystery title.
Ramona Flowers, like, Precious Little Life, or or if, shout out to the fucking Haruhi fans out there, the disappearance of Scott Pilgrim.
Yes, because I think that would have worked if they just called it like, even if you just called it like Scott Pilgrim, the disappearance of Scott Pilgrim, like, or like, or just the disappearance of Scott Pilgrim or something like that. That may have not, like, it may have not been the rug pull, but that's what they want. They want that fucking ripple on the first day on the internet, of people being like, I messed with my Scott Pilgrim, like, but then hopefully people fucking finish the show and realize how great it is and how much they stick this landing and is worth the entire watch. It might not be what you're looking for, but it because all of a sudden it's a Ramona who done it, but I think it's great, and I would recommend this. And Warp Shelf, we decide what's on the Warp Shelf. This deserves to be on your Warp Shelf. I feel like this deserves to be in the Scott Pilgrim collection.
Yes, I hope they release a physical for it, because it's always up in the air whether Netflix will do it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. I don't think they're doing edge runners, and I know everyone's fucking losing their mind about that. That they're like, what? They're not putting out a DVD of edge runner, and you're just like, yeah, okay, yep, I understand. Like, I get it, I get it. Like, but and I've seen people already doing like bootleg nice copies of like on VHS of edge runners, and I was
You gotta
dying
do what
about
you gotta
that.
do. There's been this
Yeah,
whole
do what you
like
gotta do.
conversation about physical media lately that like Christopher Nolan sparked because of Oppenheimer.
Yeah, right. It's so true, and I love that quote because it was great. He just is like, before they take it away from you, like, and it's true. It's like you don't own the movies. Sure you own the service, but they don't own the movies either.
You own a
Like,
license to stream the movie, which can
yeah,
come and go based on whether or not a streaming service or a cloud service goes away.
and with Best
I still
Buy,
collect.
yeah, and with Best Buy dropping physical media, this is starting to become a thing, guys, where you're
Yeah.
gonna need to purchase your physical media, or you're just gonna not own these movies, not be able to watch these art or these great things you love.
Yeah, there was stuff that
Without
already
yeah,
didn't make like the transition from like VHS to DVD. What happens to those that never even like got
right,
the opportunity to
right,
get put on physical media? I have Blu-rays and UHDs. I've seen the transition of all these cloud services that have just kind of come and gone. It started with Ultraviolet. Ultraviolet's gone. Voodoo.
yeah.
Voodoo's still around, but it's not really much of a thing anymore. Now it's Movies Anywhere. How long is that one gonna last?
I think people forget how old of an art film is. It's not that old, guys. It's like 120 something like years old. Like, not like, I think it's 130, 140. I don't know. I don't know the exact math on it, but it's one of those things that, like, film as a medium, as an art form, it's not that old. Like, if we're talking about painting, that's literally caveman, on a fucking wall. Film is fucking like, it's literally the last before 100 200 years, like. And then if you're talking video games, which we've already lost hundreds and thousands of video games to the fucking nothingness of not having physical media of it,
Mm-hmm.
That's literally a 40-year-old art that we've already lost a majority of the art of it.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
In the same way that we used to like fucking burn film reels to make room because reruns don't exist on TV anymore. We're not going to need these. We just need to save the space. That's why you have a shitload of like missing Doctor Who episodes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, BBC was fucking dumb back in the day. They were drinking back in those offices. They were absolutely fucking tanked.
Where they're just like, whatever, this is disposable
burning
media.
BBC.
Reruns aren't a thing yet. These are never going to air again.
Yeah. But it's one of those things that this is true. This is it's, if you do not take the preservation of this art seriously, it will disappear on us. Like, the things that are great pieces of art will literally disappear forever.
They're also kind of points in history.
And shitty pieces of art, they should be able to last forever too. Fuck it.
Yeah, they're also like points in history sometimes. Like, we talk about, say, like the original series of Star Trek for having like the first interracial kiss. There was actually like a black and white series that predates that did it first, but that was lost media until very recently.
Yeah. And you're just like, shit. Like, yeah. There's one of those things that I love watching lost media stuff on YouTube sometimes, because it's just wild to find out how much has been lost. Like, did you know that the Wicked Witch of the West has an episode of on Sesame Street, and it scared so many people at the time that they basically took it off air, and they got rid of as many copies as they could.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, one of the biggest stars of the time, like the Wicked Witch of the West, was on a Sesame Street, and people said it's a great episode where she's able to like be like, I'm scary as the Wicked Witch, but that's a character I play. She's able to like explain the dynamic of playing a character to kids, and they like got rid of it. They basically were like, nope, too scary, poof, and it's been gone until like literally 2022.
Yeah, yeah.
And you're like, what the
if
fuck?
You want
and
a good,
showed up on somebody's office.
If you want a good companion piece to that like Nolan like quote about physical media, another good one is by Joe Bob Briggs, where he goes on like this minute after minute tangent about like accessibility, curation, and the idea that like the more control that you give to these big companies for distribution, the more they can just kind of erase things and not tell anyone. We've already seen it with the way like corporations, when they have a show, will like get rid of episodes on a whim, even if it's not necessarily inappropriate. They're just having that knee-jerk reaction and they don't even want the conversation to happen. They get rid of it, or they get rid of whole seasons and episodes that are just like, well, if it's not released on physical media or hasn't been in a while, or it's on an older format that people that can't play anymore, then I guess that episode's just gone.
And that, I think that's wild, because like, people have put their time and effort into making these things, making art, and I think it's wild to be like, okay, no, it's gone now. And it's crazy to me. But besides the point, Scott Pilgrim takes off, worth the watch, but it is worth knowing that this is not a direct adaptation. Maybe we will. Maybe, like I said, I would be totally okay if season 2 was just like, all right, now we're just doing Scott Pilgrim versus the world. I mean, Scott Pilgrim versus, every book, like we're just going to do every fucking book. I would lose it if they did that for the next one. Am I okay that they did not do that? Yes.
Yeah, and the thing is cool. I doubt they'll do a straight adaptation now, because I'm sure they'll want to play in this new sandbox that they spent so much time making.
Yeah, true. I don't, but that's the thing, is it's a sandbox, but it's also one of those things that I feel like it's closed. I feel like, they dropped. I
also thought the comic felt closed.
Yeah, true. That's fair, right? Yeah, that's completely fair. I thought Scott Pilgrim was wrapped up, so for them to do this kind of blew my mind sideways also, in a way where it was just like, wow, you were able to somehow expand on Scott Pilgrim, even though there's been so many books, like that, which delve so deep into this, and we're somehow able to expand on it even more, like I love that. In a true to form way, in a way that feels like Scott Pilgrim and doesn't make you go, this isn't Scott Pilgrim. What is this? Ramona's here. Get away out of here. Like you're like, no. First off, disrespect Mary Elizabeth Winstead one more fucking time in front of my presence. Do it in front of my face again. Like, that's all I'll say. She's one of the best actresses alive, and how dare you?
Yeah, and Ramona is much better characterized here, even beyond, like, even if we didn't like put so much focus on her, like the performance just feels so much like the comic. Like, I love the movie, but Ramona in the movie is much colder than she is in the books.
Yeah, kind of like Scott is kind of more of an asshole. Like, it's kind of like they don't have time to do that growth.
Scott in the movie is much more like adorkable. And like, he's kind of a dick. He's also like, whoa, like kind of spacey all the time. And I feel like they dial back on that for this to make him more like the comic.
Yes. And I again, guys, it is a hard thing to be like, hey, maybe Scott Pilgrim, the guy, I love as a character, like, and, I've read and played and watched, maybe is the bad guy,
and maybe
maybe he is the big bad. What? Say again?
I said, and maybe projected too much onto, or tried to emulate too much.
I think that's the real issue here is that Scott Pilgrim was never something to look up to. Not really, like it's like he's relatable, but it's kind of, but it's kind of like any of these like cautionary tale characters where you're not supposed to be like, oh yeah, I want to be like Scott Pilgrim, like or I want to
maybe by the end.
Yeah.
Like if you see yourself in that, like, oh shit, I've been a Scott Pilgrim and I can see, and like kind of seeing his growth in either the comic or this is just like, okay, but I can be better. I can grow.
And I love, so I was almost, I pretty much teared up at the ending there, because we haven't talked about kind of the juice of that ending there, where and you just mentioned it, where she's like, well, what if he's right, Scott? Like, what if you can't be better? You're like, what if, and like, what if you can't make different choices, like, and it really fucking, it sticks with me, because that's, and am going to get way too personal, but it sticks with me because that's the way I feel about my father sometimes, where it's like my dad's gone through 4 divorces and, you know, gone through a lot of women. And you know, he divorced from my mom, you know, that had 3 other marriages, divorced from all of them. So it's one of those things that I grew up being like, I don't want to be like him. But every day I know that I am his son. You know, I like Scott there. He's like, I am you, you know, like I am you. Of course you can't make different decisions. You are me. And that's kind of the problem about being, you know, father and son. Sometimes you are him, you know, but knowing to be better makes you want to be better, you know, like no, what they're saying there is made me want to like break down and cry because
the like self-awareness
like,
and like acknowledgement is the first step.
Yes, exactly. It's like knowing that that's who you are and knowing to be better than that is true emotional growth. And truly, you know, like you can escape your own blood or your own mistakes. You can be better, you know, like, and I thought that was what really worked about this ending here, is that it had this ringing true moment about being better, but also about owning your own mistakes, you know, like about being like Ramona says there. It's like, no, I don't want to erase you, you know, like she keeps saying to Scott, like, no, I don't want to erase you. I don't like that's not what I want. You're the love of my life, you know, like even if we're having a rough patch, you're the love of my life. Like what, you know, like, and I thought that was so great, you know, like that, you know, like that it's like she knew that, like, even though it was ending badly, it was a great part of her life, you know, like, and that is something that's emotional growth too, not just being upset about the end of a relationship, but knowing that the relationship was great while you were in it, you know, like, and it's a great part of your life, you know, and that your life is very limited and the people you do spend your time with really add up to who you are, you know, like, and I think that's the message they're trying to give at the end there. And I was like, Jesus fuck, Scott Pilgrim takes off. You fucking loading this ending in. But I think it nails it. I think it's struck true and made me almost want to cry. But that's me. That's me. But I do like the kind of nice send off and close off that this all is after that. And but I think that, you know, it's you know, it's worth the watch is what I'll say. It's absolutely worth the watch, but you know, don't be too upset is basically what I'll say. Is don't get too upset when it's not your book adaptation, you know?
And if you've gotten to the point where like you went into this having only seen the movie, read the comic.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, if you're going into I would say probably the movie viewers without reading the books probably have the better thing here, where they don't even know that this is not doing that, you know, like not doing the book at all, you know, like they don't even know that, like, so movie viewers, if you've never read the books, you're kind of missing some things, but also, you know, you don't have to, but also at the same time, it's a great book, guys.
I mean, they did wisely when they bring Scott to the future and they show the like, oh, this is how the timeline was supposed to go. This is how it originally went. And they show him like fighting the X's and stuff. They wisely only show the stuff that was in both the comic and the movie. They don't do anything like comic specific that the movie didn't get to cover.
I did enjoy that, where they were like, it's okay, nobody worry, you know, like you didn't miss nothing, you know, like don't worry about that. And I was like, all right. Now, Deshaun, is there anything else you want to bring up before we kind of close out this review of Scott Pilgrim?
No, like I walked away positive. Like I'm open to the idea for more, just because even as a sequel, we still kind of, because we kind of rewrote the timeline, we also sort of get cheated out of like the subplot stuff. Like I want Lisa, I want Kim's stuff.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think that there could be more. I don't know if we need to. but I do
Like, there's
it's one of those
you've
things where I would still
you've
watch it.
cleaned the slate enough to the point where you can just have a Scott Pilgrim series that's more than
Yeah.
just about the end goal of like the 7X's. It can just be about something else. And maybe we
Right.
can even open it up to like a different kind of like video game structure to like make fun of.
Right. Yeah. I think it could really. That's the thing is it feels open now. I think what you're saying is now it feels open when before it could be closed off, be done.
Yeah, it was pretty open and shut.
Yeah.
But now
So,
we're pretty much in uncharted territory, so it's just like, hey, it's kind of up to them.
Yeah. I would be okay with this being the only season. I know Netflix loves to do that. Just to be like, we did this, fuck you, cancel. I would be okay with it. But I think that and financially this makes sense that they were like, okay, we get this gigantic cast together to do this and we'll just do the one season and we'll be done, you know, even though it's this gigantic expensive cast, you know. But at the same time, you know, that who knows, you know, like,
Yeah.
I would love for them
And
to
plus,
drop more
I
money
feel like
for
even
that.
if Netflix axed it, one, Scott Pilgrim might have the pop culture resonance now to go somewhere else, or worst comes to worst, O'Malley could just make another comic.
Yeah, I that's what I really want here is that as much as this is not one to watch blind first, I hope that this brings more people into Scott Pilgrim. You know, like, I hope this gets people to read more. I hope people see the movie more. You know, like, I hope you play the games. Like, I hope that this leads to more Scott Pilgrim is basically it. More Scott Pilgrim in the world, because it is a great read. It's a great watch. It's a great movie. You know, like, it's a great game. Like,
yeah.
You know,
and we forget like just how much that movie did not make money. Like, I did my part. I saw it in theaters.
I did my part.
Being unfamiliar
part.
with the source material, I saw it in theaters, and I'm glad I did. That was a great experience, and it's still one of my favorite movies.
Oh yeah, it's one of me and Mary's early dates is seeing Scott Pilgrim. So she really enjoyed. I didn't bring that up. She really enjoyed watching this because she was like, oh hell yeah, Ramona. You know, like, she was like, yeah, like, she's like Scott is shitty anyways, and I'm like, good point. I'm like, fair enough. Like, I'm like, all right. Like, and she really enjoyed the kind of that it turned into a mystery. You know, like that I thought, you know, like, I'm like, it's working then, obviously. You know, like that.
But that also feeds into that perception of Scott I brought up earlier.
Yeah.
Where it's just fuck, if you've only have the movie to go on, then you're missing like this whole fucking development that Scott gets in the book that's just not there.
True. It's true. And it feels, yeah, exactly. You're like, hey, if you want a real character study, read the books. But I think they do a great job of doing character studies of all the other characters here, you know, like, and that's why I think this feels like a great companion piece to the books, even more than the movie, you know, even though it's directly trying to be like, you don't have to read the books, you can watch the movie. It's almost a better companion piece to the books, because you could read the books and then be like, wow, another volume, basically, you know, like you're like, sick.
Like, I would not be surprised if this started initially as the idea for like a follow-up comic one shot something.
Oh,
before it's just
I
like,
agree.
what if we just made this a show?
Yeah, and basically, I just want this type of stuff from Netflix more often, you know, like this kind of deep creativity, this inspired new takes, instead of, we're gonna adapt another fucking anime and it's gonna be great. You're like, oh fuck no, stop. You know, like, let's fucking actually just make anime. Like, how about that? That? Not that they not spending a shit ton on anime recently, but like, let's just keep spending money on anime. That's what I'll be on Netflix for, if you fucking spend the money on it. You know, like, not saying that I need my fucking Gundam Hathaway movie right now. Give me 2 and 3 right now, you fucking Netflix. Fuck. Sorry, that's besides the point. But basically, guys, thank you so much for listening to this episode. Thank you to maybe seeing this show, and then or maybe you listen to this podcast first and then you watch the show, or you watch the show and you watch this. Thank you either way.
Read it.
I hope it informs you. Yes, and definitely read it.
read it, watch
Or
it, play it now that the game is available again, because that was something I complained about when we did the original episode.
Yeah.
It's just like, the game is inaccessible. You want to talk about fucking preservation? Just like, I want to play the game, I can't get it anywhere because the license lapsed.
And now you can just download it off the Nintendo Switch eShop,
Which is
or
why I
any
bought
other
two
shop.
separate. Which is why I bought two separate fucking physical copies of it, one for Switch and one for PS4.
Because they'll take it away again.
You ain't taking away from me again.
And but guys, thank you for supporting the show. Do the algorithm things down below, and be sure to check out be sure to just, most importantly, subscribe to Galaxy of Geek, the channel you're watching this on, so you can get more episodes or clips or false starts where we basically do a record test before every episode, and I post those because we try to do a joke in them. They're sometimes funny, sometimes not. Who knows? But I post them anyways. And you can check that all out on this channel, Galaxy Geek. But basically, guys, if you want to check out our personals, though, if you want to see some personal stuff, either on Instagram or it's Instagram. I'm not on X anymore. Are you on X still?
I am, but even back when it was still Twitter, I barely would actually tweet. I'm just there to fucking creep around.
You're like, I'm just here to see the fires going on, or you're like, oh shit, another dumpster fire over there. But yes, I'm Yep Frank or Yep Gundam on those,
and I'm Mod Karaika on those.
And guys, just thank you so much for supporting the show, and be sure to come back, because we this was a surprise, because we knew Scott Pilgrim was coming, but we didn't know we were gonna fucking crush it and love it and talk about it. So we were gonna do the French Connection, but that might be the next episode, back to the AFI Top 100 to be talking about the French Connection, because I feel like we need to get it in before the end of the year with his William Friedrich's death this year. I want to get it in his talk about him. Like I was dying with that fucking quote you sent me yesterday. I don't give a flying fuck into a donut what Al Pacino thinks.
Yep.
I was dying about that. We're gonna have to talk about that when we get into the episode. But be sure to be coming back, and guys, if you really want to, go check out that Scott Pilgrim episode way back then. It's on all podcast platforms, so whatever you want to do. But thank you guys, and I hope you have a great rest of your week.
We'll see you next time.
Adios.